As I mentioned, my name is Steven. I'm one of the pastors here on staff. I've been on staff for a little over 3 years, but before I was on staff, I attended here, and I was doing the math last night. I've been a part of this church for over half my life now. I'm 31 years old. I'll let you do the math on that, but it has been a pivotal role, played such a valuable role in my life. Through so many impressionable years, this church had always been here for me. In fact, I was lucky enough to meet my amazing wife, Ashley, here at C3. We started dating, we got engaged, married, and now fast forward to today, we have a 3-year-old daughter. Her name is Ellie. She's precious. She is getting a little bit of a personality. She'll growl at you. And so if you don't mind, just pray for the volunteers out there in C3 Kids. But we're also expecting our son any day now. It could be any day. So if it's, we're excited. We're super excited. Can't wait. It's coming really quick. But if she bolts to the back of the room, I might be going with her. But it's all good. Like, we've got a closer in the bullpen. His name's Barry Leathers. He's ready. But in all seriousness, this church has added so much value into my life. And my goal today, as we spend a few moments together here this morning, is to just reciprocate that value back to you. I want to give you something that I believe God wants to share with each and every one of us that's going to add value to your life. It's going to add value to your week. It's going to add value to your spiritual journey, the journey that we are all on. And so I'm very excited to share what God has in store for us here this morning. But I have a question. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Maybe you've experienced this. Ashley and I, living in Orlando, Florida, often get asked the question from maybe some out-of-state relatives or some of our out-of-state friends. They'll be like, what is it like to live in Disney? Or what is it like to live with Mickey and Minnie Mouse, right? As if I think they understand that we all just somehow live in the Magic Kingdom together, right? As one. But a lot of times what we'll do is we'll respond and we'll say, actually, we are Universal Studios fans. Yeah. And listen, I know that can create some tension, maybe a little bit of a divide here, because some of you guys are very passionate about being Disney over Universal. But for our family, Ashley and I, we are Universal Studios fans. And I will never forget this one experience that we had. We just had Ellie, and so we, at the time, didn't quite realize just how broke kids begin to make you. And so we still had our season passes, our pass holder thing going on, and we were just funneling money into Universal Studios left and right. And one day we decided, hey, let's go out to the parks for an afternoon. So we did that, and one of the really awesome things about being a pass holder at Universal is you get to park hop. And one of the really cool things about park hopping at Universal is you get to ride the Hogwarts Express. It's amazing. It's wonderful because you get to sit in this AC unit for about 5 to 10 minutes, and it takes you from one park to the next for you. You just sit there, and then right then and there, you're in the next park. So easy. So we decided we're going to park hop before we get some lunch. We hop in, get off, grab our stroller, we exit the doors and say, hey, let's go get some lunch. So we go across the entire new park that we're in. We get in line, stand in line for quite a while, get to the front. We order maybe a couple burgers maybe, and the cashier, she looks at me, she says, all right, this is going to be $265. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, reach back, and I did one of these. Have you ever had to do one of these? It's terrifying. One of the worst feelings. Got a pit in my stomach just thinking about it. And so I look at Ashley, and Ashley looks right back at me with this blank stare, and I'm like, I don't have my wallet. And then we talk it out, and next thing you know, it's not just our wallet that we don't have, it's the entire diaper bag is lost. It's missing, it's gone. We don't have it. And let me just fill you in of what's inside this diaper bag. We have got my wallet, our car keys, all of Ashley's belongings, our passes, and then the real gold mine, the diapers and the wipes are in there too, right? So listen, I'm starting to think I will never financially recover from this moment if I can't locate this diaper bag. It's somewhere in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. So I take off in a full sprint back to the Hogwarts Express, and I find the first employee that I can find. I explain the situation to her, and somehow I got the only employee at Universal that refuses to break character. So she's given me this fake British accent. And listen, I'm a nice guy, but I wasn't in the mood for it today. All right, so I was like, we got to solve this thing. And she radios, and I listen to the conversation, and it's not in Lost and Found. And my heart is just sinking by the minute. And it is the longest 15 minutes of my life because we had to wait for the train to get back. But then it happened. An employee walked off of that train with that beautiful brown diaper bag in their arms. They walked over to me, put it in my arms, and I promise you, the sun just got brighter in that very moment. The whole day completely turned around when I got that bag back. I will vividly remember this day for all of my life because I went on a roller coaster of emotions. I experienced utter terror. I was terrified that I was not going to get this back and have to sort everything out, to rejoicing in a matter of seconds. It was so quick. I rejoiced when I found what I had lost. Have you ever lost something valuable to you? Have you ever misplaced? I think we can all point to a time or two in our lives where we've misplaced something of value. Maybe it was like a passport for you. Maybe it was your diaper bag or car keys, your sunglasses, or the real worst one is your coffee, right? As a grown man, I can stand here and tell you I lost my coffee once. I almost cried about it. We don't like the unsettling feeling. Have you ever lost something before? This morning, I want us to spend a few moments together. We're going to look at a familiar passage in the Bible. And I believe that this passage that may seem familiar to us if we maybe grew up in church will still continue to reveal the magnitude of love that God has for us. But what we're going to notice is it's so far beyond just a love. This is a specific love, if not a desire for God, from God towards those that are lost. It's a deep desire, a deep love for those that are lost. Lost meaning anybody that is not in a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And God desires this relationship so badly that it's the very reason he sent his son Jesus to this side of heaven. In fact, in Luke chapter 19, verse 10, Jesus is described as this: "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." And what stands out to me, what really jumps out at me in this verse is that word seek. That word seek, right? We know the word seek, but what's interesting about the word seek is it can carry different weight values, right? Like this word seek can mean a variety of things for us. And this specific version of the word seek is found all throughout the New Testament. It's a common theme that we see. But you and I know we seek for things in different ways. Like we all spend time seeking for what we want for breakfast out of the fridge, or we try to seek for where we want to get the oil change for our car. We seek for the new show that we want to start binge watching. But wouldn't you agree with me that that version of seeking is far different than when we're seeking for our child who's lost at the mall? Very, very different. And what is interesting to me is that this translation of the word seek represents a deep sense of searching. In other words, there is an earnest seeking that is taking place here from Jesus for us. It's an intentional pursuit with a purpose attached to it. And so this morning, I want us to look at a passage in the book of Luke, chapter 15. And we're going to read through one of the many parables that Jesus uses to teach us. Now, maybe you're new to church. Maybe you're not so sure what a parable is. Well, simply put, a parable is a metaphorical story that Jesus would use to teach us as humans heavenly principles. He would use these so that he could relate to us as humans. And today, what we're going to look at is the parable of the lost sheep. But in order to properly set the stage for this parable, we actually have to look at the verses leading up to it. Because what we're going to find is that Jesus is giving this parable in response to something. And so let's look at what that is in Luke chapter 15, verses 1 to 3. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. And so as we pause here together, we see this parable is in response to something that the Pharisees said. And the Pharisees said something because of what they saw. And what they saw made no sense at all. It didn't add up in their minds. What they saw didn't make sense. The people that were gathering around Jesus and the people that Jesus was gathering around were so far disconnected from the religious law, the religious teaching, so far disconnected from God that it did not make sense to them. The tax collectors and sinners. Tax collectors, who were the tax collectors? These were people in this day and age that were so heavily disliked. Disliked primarily from the Jewish community because these tax collectors represented the Roman government, the Roman oppression that was over them. And a lot of these tax collectors were Jewish men themselves. And so they were almost seen as these traitors that have turned their back on their own people for their own gain. And they would go even further to tax above and beyond what was required of them so that they could simply pocket it for themselves. Tax collectors were cheating, robbing, stealing, and betraying innocent people. They were so far disconnected from God, and yet we see them gathering around. Sinners, tax collectors and sinners were there. Now listen, these were not people that were connected to God and tried their best to live a righteous life, but messed up every now and then, right? Because we would all fall inside that category. Every single one of us, we mess up. We create sin into our lives. We all fall short of the glory of God. But these were notorious sinners. These were individuals that in some cases were even proud to be apart from the religious law, religious teachings. They almost wore it as a badge of honor. Some of them even spoke out against God, and yet they are gathering around Jesus. I think in order to properly visualize this, we have to imagine ourselves in the shoes here. Imagine you walk down the street and you see a gathering around Jesus. He's teaching. And as you look a little bit closer, you fix your eyes, you start to see some familiar faces of those that are around him. And as you look a little bit closer, you see the person that stole and robbed from you just the day before. Sitting next to them, then you see the prisoner that was released from prison this week for a crime that deserved way more time behind bars. Then behind them, you spot eyes with the angry coworker that you work with, the one that spends the whole time in office berating and degrading the employees around them, and in some cases goes so far to harass their employees. Then next to them, you see the person, the neighbor that deals drugs to half the community. These are the individuals that are gathering around Jesus. And what's Jesus doing? Jesus isn't just teaching to them and tolerating these individuals. No, he's looking them in the eyes. He's smiling at them. He's breaking bread with them. I mean, shoot, they're probably cracking jokes as well. Jesus is showing kindness upon them. He is showing them love. They are all gathering to hear Jesus. You see, there was something magnetic to these tax collectors, these sinners. There was something magnetic to Jesus. There was something different about him. And what was it? He wasn't afraid to engage with them with kindness. He didn't stray from the truth, but he gave it to them in kindness. And I believe that they're here because they had tried every other vice, every other substance, every other pleasure in their life, and it continued to leave an emptiness, a void, a loneliness in their life. And then this man Jesus comes along. And what he's saying to them and how he's saying it to them is beginning to change something. It's beginning to fill a void that they had been pursuing to fill their entire life. But the Pharisees don't like the sight of this. No, the Pharisees have a big problem with this. And the Pharisees, what they were the teachers of the religious law. They spent their entire time teaching the rules and the laws of the religion. And what they did was they spent so much time tied down by that they were misguided and missed out on God's heart for the people that those things are for. And they began to question if Jesus really is who he says he is, the Son of God. I mean, the Son of God would certainly not be fraternizing with sinners in this moment, certainly not be breaking bread with them. In fact, this man Jesus should be looked at as spiritually unclean just by association with the people that are around him. But Jesus, he says, you've got it all backwards. You've got it all wrong. And Jesus says to them, you don't have to change in order to know me. But once you truly begin to know me, you'll begin to change. And so he lays out this parable that is so powerful for us. In verse 4, it says this: suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave that 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep. I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous who do not need to repent. So this parable is showing us truly how God sees people, truly how God sees those that are lost. God doesn't just see them, he cares for them deeply. So much so that he desires a personal relationship with them. Knowing everything about them, he desires a relationship with them. And let's be clear up front on who the lost sheep is referring to. The lost sheep is you and I. It's everyone. all of us are or were the lost sheep. This can represent anybody that has not had a moment where they have come to Christ, chosen to follow Jesus. This also represents those of us that are followers of Jesus that have wandered off, so far off in our own sin. Sin being the description of anything that goes against God's design, best perfect design for our life. And it is quite literally the thing that creates distance between us and a perfect heavenly Father. But Jesus is saying that I want a relationship with everyone. And I want to restore everyone that wanders off. You see, in John chapter 10, Jesus is referred to as the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd. He's so much more than just a hired hand. No, see, when threat and when danger comes into the sheep's life, the shepherd is quick to fight and defend that sheep's life. And that is exactly what Jesus wants to do for you and for me. And you might be here this morning, and as we sit in our seat, you might be thinking, Stephen, I don't know if that's me. Because if you truly knew the things that I have done, the baggage that I bring in here with me, the things that I simply can't shake, I've tried and I can't shake. I feel bound down by the things that are holding me back. I don't know if you truly knew me, you would say that to me right now. And listen, I'm here to tell you this morning that if that is you, I would encourage you to lean in for these remaining few moments that we have together. Because what did I say? This parable is so powerful. And I believe that there are 3 takeaways that you and I can apply to our lives, and it will reshape the way we see ourselves. It will reshape the way we see others, and it will reshape the way that we see God's love for us. So the first thing, Jesus gives us parable as a reminder that he doesn't run from the lost, he runs to the lost. Jesus doesn't run from the lost, he runs to the lost. If you ever feel as though you are too far gone, remind yourself of this. Because God, you will never find him running from you. He is always running to you. And my belief is that this is how the church should look as well. Not to be running from those that are lost, those that are distant from God, as if they've got some kind of cooties that we don't want to catch. No, the church is to run to the lost. And here is what can happen if we are not too careful. If we only are spending time with only Christians, what can actually tend to happen is we begin to lose touch with those that are lost, and we begin to forget how to relate to the position of being lost that we ourselves were also in at one point in our lives. We forget what it's like to actually be trying to find our way. And the danger is it can create this disposition in our hearts where we have this Pharisaical attitude that we see leading into the verses of that parable. And what's funny to me is we can oftentimes also see Christians and they are just absolutely repulsed and disgusted by certain things and certain sins that are looming over others' lives. Like, liars disgust me. They're the worst. I could never be close to a liar. They're the bottom of the barrel. And yet, this same person has an extreme gossip issue, and every other word out of their mouth needs to be rinsed with soap. And what can happen is we act repulsed for people who struggle with things that we don't relate to, that we maybe don't struggle with. But when someone has a sin that we do have, we can be empathetic and understanding. But Jesus says that's not the equation. No. He carries every weight with equality. And what can happen is if we fall into this pattern, we can actually begin to, like the Pharisees, dislike the sinner and not just the sin. But God's love for the sinner is unwavering. God's grace and mercy for the sinner is unwavering. Hey, the second takeaway from this parable is that Jesus seeks to bring peace, not punishment. What did we see in the fifth verse here? We saw that the shepherd locates the lost sheep and lifts it onto his shoulders joyfully. This shepherd has been seeking and searching, a deep sense of searching, finds the lost sheep and joyfully lifts it onto his shoulders. There's no punishment that we see. There's no the shepherd looking at the sheep and saying, you're on the menu tonight. None of that happens. No, there is a peace that this shepherd is experiencing. And it's because the pattern of God is peace. There's another parable that Jesus tells. It's the parable of the prodigal son. And how often in life do we take the blessings that God gives us and we run off with them and we exploit them and we turn our lives upside down? Realize that, no, we need to be in a close perimeter with God. And so we run back to God. And what does God do? He welcomes us with open arms, embraces us, and then throws a party. God chooses peace over punishment. We see it in the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus himself was also a tax collector. He robbed, he cheated, he stole from so many innocent lives. And all it took was one dinner with Jesus. And he was ready to turn the other page. One dinner with Jesus. And he said, I've stolen from so many people. Every person that I stole from, I'm going to pay them back in full. Then I'm going to send all my possessions, sell them, and I'm going to give half of that to the poor. And I will do that for the rest of my life until I make up the difference. And what does Jesus offer Zacchaeus? It's not punishment. It's salvation. The pattern of God is peace. We see it with Jesus on the cross. Jesus wore our sin and died on the cross sacrificially so that we could be offered an everlasting peace while he wore our punishment. It is by his wounds that we are healed. The pattern of God is peace. The last takeaway is that Jesus doesn't push the lost out, he brings the lost in. We see the shepherd locate the lost sheep, rejoice, throw the sheep over his shoulders joyfully. And then what does he do? He brings the sheep home. You know what this tells me? And listen, I don't know who is here this morning that needs to hear this, but where others see failure, Jesus sees opportunity. You may be here this morning. You may feel as though you've turned your life upside down. You've reached a point that you would describe as failure. Hey, Jesus, he's running to you. He wants to bring peace into your life, and he wants to bring you home because he sees opportunity in you. And what really jumps out to me in this entire parable is that final verse in verse 7. What did it say? It said, there will be more rejoicing over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Because what really moves the heart of God is when the lost are found. It's the heartbeat of heaven. And as believers, we are called to share the same heart of Jesus, reaching out to those that are lost with compassion, with kindness, and with urgency. In other words, found people are called to find people. That is our calling. We see it in the final words of Jesus before he ascends to heaven. He says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." Not just some, all nations. And one of the greatest tragedies in our culture is when Christ followers forget what it's like to be lost. Forget how to have a heart for those that are apart from God. And if we're not careful, we can treat church, these church walls, as if it's a yacht club where we all get to come together and it's okay the way it is. We don't need anybody else in here. But Jesus is making it clear that that is not what the church is for. We are to be a lifeboat. Because there are people out there that are lost, that are drowning, and that need somebody who is found to help them find their way. So when's the last time that you prayed for that coworker? When's the last time that you prayed for that family member? When's the last time that you prayed for that neighbor or prayed for that person that you just can't get along with? When's the last time you did that? Or are we too focused on the righteous herd of 99 around us that we forget about the one that is lost out there? And so the question that we all have to ask ourselves this morning is, who's your one? Who's your one? Pastor Byron says this statement so often. And it's so powerful that I help lead our student ministry on Wednesday nights. I've adopted this into the student ministry and say, hey, who's the one student that you can invite with you next Wednesday? That very same thing applies to our Sunday mornings. Who is the one person that you know of that comes to mind that needs the hope of Jesus in their life? I think we can all think of one. Who is your one? And then after them, hey, who's the next one? And then who is the next one? And then who's the next one? Because the reality is, until every person knows Jesus personally, our job is to keep seeking. Now, maybe you're here this morning and you would say that you feel lost in life. You maybe have never made the decision to commit your life to Jesus, and you're trying to find your way. And you've tried to do it, you've tried to navigate through life on your own, and it just hasn't worked. Hey, I believe that there's not one person that is here today by mistake or by accident. And I believe that Jesus has been seeking for this moment with you for a long time. And so if you are here this morning, you've never made the decision to commit your life to Jesus, hey, I'd love to lead you in a simple prayer where you can do that. In fact, if I can have everybody bow their heads and close their eyes, every head bowed, every eye closed, but if that is you here this morning, and you say, Stephen, I'm lost. I've been trying to find my way, but I feel as though I've been found. Hey, I would love to lead you in a simple prayer. You don't have to pray it out loud. You can pray it in your thoughts. God knows our thoughts, but you would just repeat this prayer after me. God, I know I need you. God, I know that I have messed up. and created sin in my life. But because of what you did for me on the cross with your son, Jesus, I can have an everlasting hope and peace and future in and through you. And so as best I know how, in the fullness of this moment, I commit my life to you. It's in your son's precious name that I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching with us today. If you prayed that prayer, Pastor Brian would love to know so that he could be praying for you. If you want to text your name to 407-487-8311. We also want to thank you so much for your faithful generosity. If you'd like to give, you can go to givec3.cc. If you're in the Orlando area, we would love to see you on Sundays at 8:15, 9:45, and 11:15. Can't wait to see you there.